Daily Mail reports new Save San Francisco gets $4 million in funding from Billionaires, even as more than 40,000 crimes are recorded across the city this year, and office vacancy rates are at 34%.
And then you see, my favorite is like now you see these, like, I love when the media puts out these propaganda pieces. It's like the people with the happiest places to live in America. And it's all of these cities. And you're like, how is that possible when the crime is this high? And you look at the index about like what actually they constituted to mean happiness. And it's, and it tends to be things like abortion rights and all these other things like
killing babies.
Yes,
you
exactly.
happy.
If that makes you happy, then that's fine. But it's like nobody learns their lessons in these cities anymore. I just don't see anything changing. Of course, like I said, it could be because I'm younger and I just don't have the perspective of however many years.
You look, San Francisco can be saved.
How, really? With
Yes.
the billionaires? The billionaires can save it?
There is a billionaire who could save it.
Which one?
Elon
Musk?
No.
Which one?
Please.
Bruce Wayne?
Donald Trump?
Donald Trump.
Donald Trump could, yeah. Well,
He saved New York City.
He's pretty good. So
You
did
know about-
Giuliani. Giuliani was great.
Sure. But Donald Trump is credited with turning New York around. You know about this, Ron? You know about this, right?
Tell me this particular narrative.
So as the story goes, New York in the 80s was a crime-ridden hellhole. I mean, and
It was.
into the 90s, you had the subway vigilante that people were cheering on because they were so sick and tired of the crime. And it's crazy for me to have to look at these photos of the old subways of how it used to be.
That wasn't the 80s. That was the 70s. It was and it was Ed Koch who began the process of reclaiming. In other words, the 80s was the turnaround decade for that.
So the argument for Donald Trump's involvement was that it really is a simple story. Property was cheap. There was an opportunity to create this vision of upscale New York living. Donald Trump started to build and develop in the area and work to convince many other wealthy people to come back because it was the cool place to be. And this is where you needed to be with all the luxury, brought back tax revenues. And that's the very, very, very simple version. I watched like a 2-hour documentary breaking down the real estate development and how it started to change neighborhoods.
I could see a narrative that says, among the people who made a change were Donald Trump. But the idea that Donald Trump, I was there. I was there. And it was interesting that Donald Trump was building luxury housing. And there was also a very remarkable incident. There was a skating rink in Central Park that had been fallen into disrepair like everything in New York did in the 60s and 70s. And New York City had been utterly unable to repair it. They could not. Woolman Rink, it was called.
This is a great story.
Right.
I love this one.
Utterly unable. And then just because all these work rules and all these unions of Donald Trump, who's in the time was just Donald Trump. Okay. He just was this guy who was a real estate developer. He says, I can do this. And the Koch administration says, all right, wise guy, let's see you do it. And in like 3 months,
He fixed it up.
he fixes it up. And it was this great free enterprise story that, see what a can-do person can do if he's not working for the guy. And it was, and that really put him on the map in a sort of political way that he had not previously been at the time. But, New York is one of those places that you can hardly ever really learn any lessons from that are applicable to. In other words, New York
is its very own place.
Right. When I grew up, the garment district was a place where garments were manufactured. New York was still an industrial city, and it was a shipping hub, neither of which it is at all anymore.
Well, during COVID, I remember because I had extra time on my hands, there was I lived in Bay Ridge, and I was always seeing I would ride my bike down the Greenway, and there were the massive ships coming in, like those huge cargo ships. There were a ton of them. And then at a certain point, it stopped for a while. And I was like, that's not good.
Well, but
the shipping just kind of dried up.
Shipping is now basically done in the port of Newark and Elizabeth.
Right. You see those giant things
those were
when
all
you
the
drive out the city.
So New York Harbor wasn't deep enough to be containerized, to take a lot of reasons. It also had to do with the corruption of the unions on the docks. But
the merchant marines.
The point,
which is still you get family connections to get into the merchant marines still.
The thing, though, is that New York, despite losing its industrial base and its transport significance, the way all the great northeastern cities did, because it had been a center of finance, Wall Street kept New York alive, and through the 90s, injected, when deregulation came and Wall Street started becoming the racket that it is now. And that happened. And then between Koch and Giuliani, the rebuilding of New York into a tourist destination was, best case scenario, you're never going to make Cleveland or Philadelphia that kind of destination. They simply doesn't have the attraction.
Right.
So New York, you can't, even if it were true that Donald Trump did this in New York, San Francisco is of course, actually, San Francisco does have the tourist aspect to it. But I mean, look, my law firm, Dillon Law Group, our headquarters is in San Francisco. That's where most of our, first of all, we can't even hire support staff in San Francisco anymore.
Really? Why not?
People will not work in the city, in San Francisco.
I saw this wild video today of this woman who was just in tears. And she was like, I just got my first 9-to-5 job after finishing college.
Oh, yeah,
you must have seen this.
Yeah,
right?
we talked about it.
I can't believe it. How do you have time for having a personal life if you work a 9-to-5 job? I was like,
that video,
what, are you
when
nuts?
when we started watching that, like, I was like, okay, dunk on this girl, right? But it's like, look, she's
not wrong.
She's not
but
wrong,
suck it
but
up,
she's also young, and
Sure.
she will eventually, the pain of coming home from work when it's dark out will scab over, and she'll just understand that that's
She'll
the way
just
the
go
world
to the
is.
bar.
Yeah, like
Like
it's
the rest of us.
It's very easy to dunk on stuff like that, because that's my first thought was the same thing. It's like, look, you got to work. That's the way the world works.
Sometimes
I'm sorry.
you just have to go to work.
But but when I watched that, I'm just like, look, if it was like her first day after her first 9-to-5 shift, it happens. She'll change.
So just
Maine.
we're trying to be careful with this about Maine. There are some high-profile accounts tweeting that some photos of the suspect have been released.
Oh, I'm seeing that too.
Many people are saying it's two individuals of Middle Eastern descent. It's very preliminary. There's police.
Go ahead, sorry.
The suspect does look like they may be Middle Eastern. The photos released. I don't know for sure. And there's a police scanner video going around of what appears to be dispatchers or someone, the police saying, 2 males, one armed with a gun, Middle Eastern descent, maroon SUV. But we don't know that any of these things are real. And I bring this up because, if you're in the area, you need to stay safe. I don't know if this information could help, but I will say, if people are putting out fake information, you need to make sure you're looking towards trusted sources and directly to law enforcement if you're in the area. But the big concern right now is, like, there are some parody accounts tweeting this video. This could be a fake clip of a police scanner because people are just trying to sow chaos, which is horrifying and it's terrifying. I don't know for sure, but a lot of people are saying they've seen similar things outside of this, and a few high-profile accounts are saying Middle Eastern, described as Middle Eastern. So that's it for now. It's not confirmed. Don't know. Please stay safe. That was basically why when you were like, it's Maine probably not related. I'm like, just because the guy's Middle Eastern doesn't mean it is related. But with what we've seen so far,
Crazy.
There's one story we didn't pull up where a guy broke into the home of a Jewish family in California and was threatening to kill them. So,
Yeah, that's crazy too.
do you want to live in a city right about now? You know where I want to live is West Virginia.
It just never makes sense.
We all
like,
have guns.
Now, the more that I see all of this stuff in all of these cities, and that's what I'm saying. Like, it doesn't seem like every voting cycle they ever learn their lesson, right? These places
No.
become more crime ridden with every election cycle. It gets more. Remember how long ago was it? Like 2 months ago when Kai Cenat did like the PlayStation 5 giveaway, like 20,000 people
Right, in
showed up
Union Square.
and just hundreds of thousands of dollars of damage gets done.
Well,
And it's like, why?
But look, this is my point. That dude did a PlayStation giveaway, and people started rioting and destroying and attacking people.
Yeah.
People were getting beaten up in the street. Why? There's no political cause there. It doesn't matter. Because people go insane in large crowds.
So basically,
mobs are
cities
nuts.
were just the bad. Cities are just the problem. It's
yeah.
it's people being condensed.
Not all
into-
people do.
You know what's crazy?
Not all people go insane in large crowds.
Well, not all people do, but there. I mean, I think that it is. I think that everyone has the capability to become a monster
It's true that not all
if they
people
stop
do.
thinking. You
but
know,
I
I mean,
think-
it's.
do you think you do?
Do I think I do?
Yeah.
Oh, for sure.
I don't think you do.
I think I mean, I think if I don't think I do,
dare
I am
you.
at
I dare
greater risk of becoming a monster than if I.
It's not
Come
just
on.
being a
You're
monster.
You have to-
in large
you have to
large
be very
crowds, people
considerate
are
and
not
think
just
about it.
being violent; they're also just being very, very stupid. So going insane is not just about a person deciding to smash a window; it's people acting in irrational ways.
Okay.
So
I got to tell you something. There are people, and it includes everyone in this room right now, who will never be swept away by that.
you're correct, but it's a small number.
And you
It
have
might
to be
the
aware of
the
it.
five of us.
Well, you know what the thing is.
It's
Nobody else.
having been on the ground and again, I assume first responders can probably speak to this way better than I, but having been in numerous conflict situations, urban conflict, civil unrest, I can tell you that out of the 500 people in the crowd, you'll see 3 act rationally. That's and the rest are just you wonder why someone would do such a thing. Like you ever watch Indiana
Well,
Jones?
January 6th, by the way.
Oh, no.
January 6th, frankly, there were people. It was dumb to go in the first place. It was an obvious trap, whether it was set up as a trap by the government or not, I'm not even getting into, but you'd have to be a schmuck, I think. But people who did not go there looking to make trouble definitely lost their head.
But that's not necessarily what I mean. Have you ever seen the movie Prometheus?
No.
Have you guys seen Prometheus? Brad, of course, seen
Yes.
all of it. Okay, you know the scene when the giant ring ship is rolling forward? And, okay, so it's a gigantic spaceship. It's a big donut. And it is rolling. And there is a person running in the line of the ship as it's about to crush them, and they get crushed. And you ask yourself, like, that was dumb. Why didn't they run to the left?
Yeah.
And it's like, I wonder why. And it's like, it kind of you're like, that's stupid. If I was doing it, I'd.
Psychology of
Let me
panic,
tell you.
though.
Let me tell you. I have been at so many riots where people have been shot, and everyone runs straight down the line of where the person is shooting and being chased. And I've just been like,
Why do they do that?
because people just go insane.
Psychology
in
is
large
public
crowds.
panic.
And
Target fixation.
And my attitude is just like, why did you not turn left? And like just break away from the crowd and
You may be
get away.
You may be more able to think like in a
Yeah.
high pressure situation. You may be more prone to thinking rationally than other people are.
Yeah, sure.
Well, I think it could be experience.
Yes.
But I think this is my point is that it's not just about whether they're going to attack. It's about the general breakdown of cognitive function.
And right now we're in a society, like a lot of these, they're young people, right? We have a heavily medicated society. We have a very, very doomeristic society right now where kids are angry, kids are upset. They're being constantly bombarded with fear porn about climate change, about all of these things. They're told the world's going to end in 12 years by politicians. And you wonder why people are so on edge and so easy to push to violence or push to
It's like Greta
irrational
Thunberg,
acts.
who's been
My
on
wife is
strike,
always
is
referring
now on strike for Gaza.
the well-respected and highly accomplished writer for Legal Insurrection, Jane Coleman, who is Mrs. Coleman, my wife, is always referring to the work about crowd psychology by Elias Canetti. And he deals with what Tim is talking about here is and in his work he really expands the application of crowd psychology to a tremendous number of phenomena in society. But he would, you should look at that book, Tim, and tell me what's in it. Because between you and Jane, I don't have to read it.
Oh, he won the Nobel Prize in 1981. That guy.
He was quite a big deal.
Interesting.
Very, and that's what we're talking about here is the madness of crowds.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to be unrealistic about it. I recognize that but I do think that people who are more civilized will act more civilized in large numbers, and people who are less civilized will act less civilized in large numbers. And
Yes.
we once thought we had a civilization here.
Well, we did have a civilization when we built it, and we built it so big and so strong that it's taking a long time to crumble.
And then
we-
what
But it
happened
is
was
crumbling.
we started saying we should work really, really hard to make sure people who are unwell can continue to be a part of our society. And there's good things about that. We
Right.
want to help people survive.
Right. Well, I mean, there's the unwell. I mean, there's what's happened to public spaces in general. And that's the San Francisco story, right? Is that we gave up the idea that a society is entitled to not necessarily act cruelly towards people who are unwell, but to protect itself and its spaces and its children and its vulnerable people from those who are unwell. That's one issue. Then there's the other issue of the importation of pre-modern societal units.
That's a crazy thing that's happening right now. The importation of, as you say, what did you say?
Pre-modern.
Pre-modern societal units.
I mean,
That is pretty wacky. And then
that's where we are.
And then also
Well,
refusing to encourage assimilation and telling them that their culture is better than ours.
Well, so there's a story that I was told, I can't remember where I heard this, about a Saudi Arabian town that had a lot of oil. And for the entirety of their small town's existence, it was very tribal. No computers, phones, none of this stuff. And then when oil was discovered, they were all of a sudden very, very, very wealthy. And they did not adapt very, very well to having mass wealth. And what happened was they were just covered in gold chains and rubies and jewelry. To them, when you're in living such a way, the status symbols were not fancy cars, was not big skyscrapers and penthouses. It wasn't the luxury infinity pool. It was gold and chains and things like this, and having your jewelry. So when they got a lot of money, they just amplified everything that was about luxury to them. So they ended up just covering themselves in gold. And that was basically explained to me as like, what happens when you abruptly just give maximum wealth to one group of people. And it really is, it's regardless of the level of development, this behavior exists. And it's obvious because you can only know what you know. For instance, if you go to your average American and give them a ton of money, what are they going to do? They're going to buy a big house. They're going to get a big pool. They're not going to act outside of societal norms.
Lottery winners, while so many lottery winners end up losing most of the money because they did not, how they end up getting to it, they don't actually know how to invest or how to build the wealth.
But it's not just that. It's like, you know, Elon Musk wants to build a spaceship. The average person who gets billions of dollars doesn't build a spaceship. Yeah. They want to do things that they believe is luxury and their desire. So nice cars, big houses, you know, big properties and things like that. Many of them don't go and buy horses. But horses are expensive, and horses can be considered dressage of fancy. No, they don't act outside of their culture. So if you bring people into the United States that go from an impoverished city in, you know, Honduras into the U.S., they're going to, with access to these resources, amplify them in a way more akin to their society and less akin to ours. Right? It's not about level of technological development. Right? If they have certain behaviors when they get money, they go out and have this special kind of party with 13 kinds of booze or whatever. They'll do that same thing here. And then we'll say things like, shouldn't they be taking care of their house and whatever? Or shouldn't the people in this small village be installing plumbing and like buying cars and building roads? We're so shocked that they buy gold and jewelry and gems. But
No,
that was luxury.
This
I
is
think
why
the point
people
you're
make fun
making-
of the nouveau riche.
Well, okay, but I think on the other end of the scale, the point you're making is the fallacy of liberalism. One of the great fallacies of liberalism has always been poverty is what makes people misbehave.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that's still the line. Why do Palestinians from Gaza massacre people and burn them alive? Poverty. No. It's asinine. It's an asinine rap.
Well, that's an extreme leap.
But listen,
I think poverty is a huge component.
It's a component, but the point is, you have societies that have lacked wealth forever and have nonetheless been stable, nonviolent.
Like what?
Well, the Eastern European Jews were remarkably poor in the 20th century, and certainly those in the Pale of Settlement in Russia. But they were a minority. So it's maybe not a very good example. But
Well, no. Look.
But it was
wealth
still a
is relative.
stable society.
and so was Yemen, for example. The Moroccans and Yemen. In other words, much of the Middle East before the Western powers started screwing things.
So like before the 40s.
Well, I would say, but really before the 40s. I would say, the 19th century, 20th century. It's when they were dirt poor. These were really. Remember, petroleum is not a factor, so there's no reason. It's been millennia since spice roots mattered, right? And petroleum is not a thing yet. So what is making Arab societies wealthy? Nothing. They're not wealthy. They're poor. But I mean, homogeneity is an issue also. But the point is, they had stability, and you don't have to be poor to be, to be violent or to be unhappy or to misbehave socially.
A big issue in America right now, it's not about wealthy and poor, it's about wealth inequality, which has become a big striking point for a lot of those people, right?
Well, I think that's it, right? That's why the point I was going to make is if you go back 200 years, what is the saying? You have a poor person has better dental care today than Rockefeller did, 100 or whatever years ago. Technological development. So now poor people have air conditioning. They have refrigeration. They have clean running water.
And they have Cheetos. I mean,
that's right.
America has fat
and Taco Bell
homeless people.
Yeah, we have fat homeless people.
That's right. Surviving, getting the calories you need to survive is not an issue.
No, there's plenty of that.
Right.
In fact, it's an issue that we get too many. This country has too many calories.
Too many calories.
We got to get rid of some of those calories.
But so much of it is like, look, there are large social programs for people who are unable to pay for food, who are unable to pay. We do take care in a lot of ways. Our social programs do cover a lot of that, but there's still this large call for discussions about wealth inequality that leads to violence at a lot of these, at least what it seems like to me, right? Like a lot of what we're talking about, it's telling you the millionaires and the billionaires. Oh, sorry, it's just the billionaires now because Bernie Sanders, he's a millionaire.
Right.
But yeah, that's the rallying cry.
Thanks for watching this clip from the Timcast IRL podcast. Hang out with us live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. and become a member over at timcast.com for uncensored, members-only shows exclusive. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you all next time.